Hey guys, and welcome back to EQ Planes, and today I'll be reviewing the Southwest Airlines 737 MAX 8 on their inter-island product between Kahului on the island of Maui and Honolulu on the island of Oahu. Now I'm really excited to be flying this route today with Southwest for a couple of reasons. The first of which being, as a Canadian, I've never flown Southwest Airlines before on my trips to the United States, and they supposedly have quite the good reputation. So I'm definitely interested in seeing if it lives up to that. Another reason being the routes themselves. Traditionally, inter-island routes were dominated by Hawaiian Airlines, who used to charge quite a hefty amount for them, but after Southwest came in, they definitely lowered the prices and provided another option. So I'm interested in also seeing how this stacks up to Hawaiian Airlines, which I have flown on these routes before. Now the check-in process was fairly easy for me as I did it entirely online. One thing I would like to note though is that surfboards fly for free on Southwest Airlines on these inter-island routes, so that's an interesting little perk to note. After making my way through a fairly quick security line, given it was a little bit earlier in the morning, let's take a closer look at what Kahului Airport has to offer. The airport's layout is relatively simple, with it just being one giant big line, connected by a central area containing places to eat and shop. Now this flight was a little bit earlier in the morning, meaning that almost all the places were closed except for Starbucks. Another thing to note is that you will need to pass through an agricultural inspection every time you go from that main area to one of the sections actually containing the gates and seats. However, the agricultural inspection is a relatively simple and easy process, not taking much time as you just need to throw your bags through an X-ray screener relatively quickly. Now today, my flight, along with all of Southwest Airlines' other flights out of Kahului, will be departing out of the south section of the terminal, which I don't think I prefer quite as much as the north section, which I usually go through on the many times I've been through this airport. I tend to find that the hallway is a fair bit narrower, and it definitely gets a little bit more crowded before flights. But there certainly weren't many people going out this morning, so it wasn't a problem today. But now, let's take a closer look at this Southwest 737 MAX 8, which will be taking us to Honolulu today. As of recording this video, this 737 MAX is just under a year old and registered November 8, 753 Quebec. It's definitely interesting seeing just how quickly the 737 MAX has entered the market, as it is now already my second most flown aircraft of all time, only behind the 767-300ER, as I've now flown a 737 MAX 11 times. Another interesting quirk of Southwest Airlines is that no seat selection is available. Instead, you board the aircraft in a numbered order, and from there, it's a free-for-all. However, you can pay for a better position in line if seat selection is something that matters to you. Now, let's talk about the seating arrangements on board this aircraft. The seats are featured in the 737 standard 3x3 in economy, which is the only class available on Southwest Airlines as they are low cost. There are 175 seats on board in total. Today, I'd make my way to seat 7A, which is definitely a seat I would suggest on this aircraft as it does provide a pretty good engine and wing view, which you'll see more of in a minute. Now when it comes to my first impressions of the cabin, they're definitely quite positive, as it still had that new airplane smell and they were absolutely killing it with the mood lighting. Everything also seemed to be relatively clean, which was definitely a plus. But now, once again, coming back around to that mood lighting, I definitely think it's something that Southwest has done uniquely, which most other airlines just do solid color. They've done multicolor and they've sort of themed it to the livery, which is something that I think adds a little bit extra to the experience. But now, after waiting on the ground for about 20 minutes, please enjoy this taxi and takeoff from Kahului Airport, and when we get into the sky, I'll go over the seat in more detail. Let's take a closer look at the seats provided by Southwest Airlines. One of the first things that stood out to me about the seat was the legroom and just how good it was. I'm 6'2" and had no problem fitting into it, and was definitely surprised how good it is for not only a budget airline, but a narrow body as well. This definitely is better than some of the legroom provided on legacy carriers on their long-haul aircraft. The tray table was also relatively large and placed a good height above the knees. When it comes to seat padding, I found it was definitely decent and was more than I was expecting from a low-cost carrier. They also offered a pretty good amount of recline. My only real complaint about the seat was the lack of charging ports on it. In my opinion, in-seat power should definitely be something that's just standard these days. When looking in the backseat pocket, you have a menu which also advertises their in-flight entertainment options, along with a 737 MAX safety card and an air sickness bag. Another thing to note is they did come around with water as a drink service on this relatively short flight. You do get juice on Hawaiian Airlines on all these short flights. However, I'm definitely not going to complain, as it's certainly a nice touch to have any kind of service on a flight of such a short duration. Another nice thing about this flight is the absolutely great views it provides of the Hawaiian Islands. Here you can see the island of Lanai. I'd also like to mention that our crew was perfectly fine and I didn't run into any issues there. Also, due to the short duration of this flight, unfortunately the seatbelt signs were not taken off at any point, which means no Lu review for today. Anyways, now I'll shortly leave you with this landing into Honolulu, and be sure to stick around for my final thoughts on the aircraft. And if you've enjoyed the video thus far, please consider subscribing for some more aviation content. Anyways, now let's move into my final thoughts. First off, I'm incredibly pleased with the value that Southwest Airlines offers. Although these flights were only about $59 American, which are definitely low-cost fares, I definitely didn't feel like I was on a low-cost airline. As not only do they offer a really solid onboard product, but also offer features like free flight changes and free bags, which is something that a lot of legacy carriers don't even offer. So in my opinion, they definitely do live up to the hype. And within regards to how they compare to Hawaiian, I think Hawaiian Airlines is clearly the lesser of the airlines on these routes, as Hawaiian Airlines' seats on the 717s are pretty slimline and aren't really comparable to what you get on Southwest Airlines. However, I will have a trip report on the Hawaiian 717 coming soon, so be sure to stay tuned for that. And I know I talked about it at the start of the video, but it cannot be understated just how much prices have dropped since Southwest Airlines has come in. There was a point in time when with Hawaiian Airlines you could be paying upwards of $300 round trip for flights. So regardless whether or not you prefer Southwest Airlines or Hawaiian Airlines, there's no doubt that Southwest coming in as a competitor has done a lot of good for the pricing on these inter-island routes. Anyways, that's all I have to say for this review. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you guys back next time.